According to an interview published March 6, 2015 in Billboard magazine, Jack White was quoted as saying, it's the movie theater compared to the iPhone. It's less about sound quality than it is about, it's less about sound quality than it is about aura. With vinyl, you have a ritual. You are at the mercy of a needle. You put the needle down and you watch the record spin, and it's like you're sitting around a campfire, and it's hypnotic. How do you think that Muddy Waters and Janis Joplin were able to listen to music for the first time? Or how do you think that John Lennon was inspired to become a musician? It was through listening to music on vinyl. It was through the mass production and distribution of vinyl records that music was able to be shared and distributed throughout our culture. And it had been considered virtually obsolete with the advent of the CD up until the last decade. It's important to learn about vinyl records because it's important to learn about the things that came before the things that we have now. Also, it is the fastest growing form of music media, and I think it's important because we need to be savvy musical consumers. So in this speech, I will educate you about the vinyl record. I will talk about the birth of the vinyl record, its place in relation to culture, as well as the resurgence of the vinyl record in today's culture. The vinyl record, or what was first considered a record, was invented in 1877 by the Wizard of Menlo Park, Thomas Edison, and it was actually a cylinder. So it was a brass cylinder, and it was really bulky and heavy, and it was connected to an apparatus that had a horn on it and a stylus, and the cylinder would be coated in wax, and the stylus would be placed on the cylinder. There would be a crank, and you would speak into the horn in the apparatus, and then the radio waves would be captured and transcribed onto the cylinder. The cylinder was really bulky and heavy, but Edison ended up mass distributing it in 1895. That same year, a German immigrant by the name of Emil Berliner made improvements on the vinyl record. He actually made it into a thin shellacked disc, which was easier to carry. And shellac is a thermoplastic, meaning that it becomes soft and malleable when heated and stiffens when cold. According to DJ Hoke, who is the head of the Northwestern University Music Library, any record or any flat disc made between the years 1898 through 1950 were called 78s. And this was referring to their 78 rotations per minute, or RPM. So that's just a little bit about the beginnings of the vinyl record. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the place of vinyl records within culture. So really, vinyl records didn't make their way, or didn't become vinyl until World War II, when shellac became a resource that was not readily available just because of World War II, so they started making records out of vinyl plastic. And then they were popularized as forms of entertainment. They helped to boost the morales of the troops overseas, as well as people on the home front. So the way that they were shared is they were actually played on radio waves by the first disc jockeys, and that way they were transmitted into people's homes. But it wasn't really until the 1950s when rock and roll music and new genres of music were being discovered, and new artists were being discovered, such as Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley, who recorded his first record when he was 15, and he saved between the ages of like 11 to 15, just a little side note, to make his first record. And it was around this time also, America, our society, was extremely conservative. It was during the McCarthy era, during the Red Scare, that the records started to, or not the records, but I guess the musical artists that were putting out these vinyl records were being persecuted for degenerating America's youth. So then they would have these like giant record burning parties, and they would go and they would burn all these records. And then after the McCarthy era was over, record sales steadily started to rise between 1950 and 1965, but they didn't actually hit their peak until the 1980s with the advent of hair metal music. During the 70s, there was like a brief blip in sales just because of the 8-tracks, but they didn't really gain as much popularity as the cassettes and compact discs that were invented in the late 80s, which is when you started to notice that vinyl was becoming more obsolete. And lastly, I kind of want to talk about the resurgence of vinyl records in today's culture. They're quickly making a comeback. Ever since 2001, there's been an 18% increase in sales globally, so not just nationwide, of vinyl records. And this can be attributed to the fact that they are now like a component of a CD. People want like a tangible piece of art that they can take home with them. So because they have the sleeves and they have all of the artwork from like the artists, and they have all of this like graphic, even the records themselves are coming in like different colors. They're now being sought after, and companies like Crosley are starting to like market record players and records in stores like Urban Outfitters, and they're marketing them towards the younger generation. So now more people our age are starting to collect and listen to vinyl records. And in conclusion, I discussed the birth of the vinyl record, its place in culture, and also its resurgence in today's society. Thank you.